Ashley sat in the back seat of the car, her eyes wide as she watched the scenery flash by. She had never been on a road trip before, but her parents had insisted she try something adventurous after the tragedy that had occurred in their lives. The car was packed full of her family's belongings, leaving little room for her. But Ashley was determined to make the best of it. She took out her favorite book and started reading, hoping to pass the time. The road was bumpy, and Ashley's book slipped out of her hand and fell onto the floor of the car. She tried to pick it up, but the car swerved and fishtailed, causing the car to skid and spin out of control. The car came to a stop, and Ashley looked out the window in panic. They were somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and the only thing she could see was a small cabin in the distance. Ashley's parents got out of the car, looking worried. "Are you okay?" her mother asked, brushing her hair out of her face. Ashley nodded, but she wasn't sure if she was really okay. As they walked closer to the cabin, Ashley saw that it was old and run down. There was a for sale sign in the front yard, and she wondered if they were here to check out the place. The door was locked, so they walked back to the car to get the tools they'd packed. It was then that Ashley noticed a small note pinned to the windshield. It read, "Welcome to the cabin. Please stay for 24 hours. Note, you are not alone. Please bring your loved ones." Ashley looked around the car, then back at the cabin. She felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that there was someone else there, someone who wasn't her parents or her friends. Her heart started racing as she searched the car for her friends, but they weren't there. Instead, she found a strange old camera and a note. Note, "Welcome to the cabin. Please stay for 24 hours. Suddenly, Ashley's phone rang, and her heart leaped with joy. She fumbled around in her bag and pulled out her phone, relief evident in her voice. "Hello? Ashley?" Ashley smiled as her friends' voices came over the phone. She filled them in on what was happening, and they all agreed to meet up in the cabin after her parents left. But as the sun began to set, Ashley began to feel uneasy. She couldn't explain it, but she knew something wasn't right. Her parents left for the night, promising to keep an eye on her. Ashley's friends left, and she found herself alone, still feeling scared and alone in the cabin. As the night wore on, Ashley began to hear strange noises coming from the walls. She felt like she was being watched, and she could hear the sound of snoring coming from the old cabin. She sat on the bed, shaking, as she tried to figure out what was happening. She felt like she was in a horror movie, and she knew that she needed to get out of there. But as she got up to check the lock on the door, something strange happened. The door swung open on its own, and Ashley stood in the middle of a large room. She looked around, her mouth hanging open in terror. There were people everywhere, all staring at her. Suddenly, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned around and found herself face to face with a strange old woman. She was wearing a white gown and had a cane in her hand.
"Welcome to the cabin. You are not alone,"
the woman said. Ashley's heart sank as she looked around the room. There were more people in the room than she could count, all staring at her. Suddenly, Ashley heard a voice coming from behind her. It was a voice she recognized, one she had never heard before in her life.
I'm sorry, Ashley. I can't leave here. I am cursed.
Ashley looked at the woman and the evil old man beside her. Suddenly, she knew what needed to be done. She took out her phone and called her friends. They all arrived in the room, and together, they marched forward. Together, they fought against the curse, and in the end, they were able to break it. Ashley woke up, her heart pounding with excitement. She looked around, relieved to find that it was just a dream. As she got out of bed, she realized that the cabin was gone. But in the distance, she could see a small cabin, one that looked like it had somehow come from her dream. As she walked closer, she saw a small note on the door. It read, "Welcome to the cabin." As she stepped inside, Ashley knew that something special was happening. She felt like she was home, like she had finally found what she had been looking for all along. From that day forward, Ashley knew that she was never alone again. She had her family, her friends, and the cabin. And in the end, it was all that really